Thanks everyone for coming to share this remembrance with John today. It's great to see friends and family. John was, we always considered John, JW, one of our family, and spent many an occasion with him either at his place or here. And it's funny in the last couple of months how many moments have come up, especially this week, and reflecting on his little expressions and his wordplay he always had with me and stuff. So it feels really good to have you all here and to share this moment and kind of remember him, our dear friend. So I'm going to turn this over to Alon, who's going to kind of lead us through a group where we'll all speak. Whoever would like to speak may do that. We'll do a little ceremony, we'll have music, and enjoy yourselves and enjoy remembering John.
Thank you. I'm called Alon. I am a priest, basically retired, Jewish mother, Irish Catholic father. Hell of a family to grow up in. So, life really is a celebration, and that's what I heard from Jamie and Jeremy, the cousins of John. And that's what we want to do this evening, is celebrate with stories. You all know him. So, where do we begin? Who wished to tell the first story on John? Because part of what we're doing is drawing the spirit of John in to prepare for his release and let go. So,
I do suggest that whoever's speaking would stand in a corner here or a corner there, because otherwise the sun's right in our eyes and everybody's blinded. So probably in a corner would be good.
Okay. Unless you block the sun.
Well, I've known John for a long time, back in Berkeley and on. And I have a million anecdotes about John, but I thought we'd only say the nice one. And any of you who've ever driven with John or ridden with him knows what kind of driver he is. That used to scare the hell out of me. You know that trick where you go from the passing lane to the exit? All the horns are beeping? Well, I kept harassing him and saying, why don't you drive, like a decent human being? And when the cops would pull him over, he would always get out and start getting aggressive at the cops. And I said, that's not the right way. So I said, you appreciate Gandhi. Try peaceful resistance. So he came home one day and he said, I tried it out and it worked. I said, well, reenact it. He said, well, he pulled me over. I just sat there and stared into space. And the cop said, would you like to know why I pulled you over? And he said, no. Very weak voice. And so the cop said, well, get out of the car. And he got out of the car. And he's staring into space. He goes, are you okay? Are you on something? And he goes, no. And so the cop says, well, break up with your girlfriend? No. So the cop opened the door, ushered him back in and said, have a nice day. Want another one?
yeah.
Let's see. I've got so many. One time we were driving in San Francisco and the traffic came to a stop. And so he started beating his horn. And I'm sure if you've driven with him, you remember that. And I said, John, it's a red light. He goes, I don't care. Get it moving. So he drives up on the sidewalk. And we start going down the sidewalk. And there's all these people there. He said, what are these people doing here? And he beeps them. I said, it's a bus stop, John. And he beeps them out of the way. We go down the sidewalk, drop off the curb, and make a right. And I've been drinking a beer. I figure somebody's got our license plate. So I throw it out the window. He goes, Al, that's littering.
Alcohol abuse.
I just want to say that Alan did this painting up here.
Beautiful.
Hi, I'm Paul Spiegel. I've known John since September or so, 1974, when I was a freshman at Berkeley and John had just graduated. It's been part of my life ever since. I have to amplify Alan's story a little bit. John was known in those days for driving around town in a 1960s Maserati 3500 GT. This was not just any car, you understand. It was a remarkable and almost epic piece of machinery, and John did drive kind of the way that Alan said he drove. I never really expected to be here saying any of this, because John has always been a nexus for people. He is one of my oldest friends, one of my dearest friends, but he's also brought so many people together in his life, and he's the connection. He is one of the center points around which the magic of the universe coalesces. And it's really gratifying to see everybody here today celebrating what was really a truly remarkable life. I have plenty of stories about John, and I'm not sure which one I should really share, because there are so bloody many of them. I just remember learning about this guy, John the commuter. Freshman year of college. A friend of mine who's not here tonight asked me to give everybody his regards. Was hitchhiking around Berkeley. He was a guy I lived in the dorms with. Still one of my very best friends. He said, I've met this incredible guy, and you got to meet him. I said, what's going on? I said, well, I was hitchhiking in North Berkeley, and I got picked up by this really cool dude. And so, we've been at Berkeley for 6 weeks or something, and he said, do you know, where would I go to get some pot around here? And, John had an idea. And before long, we were all hanging out at his house up on Monterey Street, and he was hanging out with us in the dorms and houses that we had rented, and that was 43 years ago. And we're all still here, and he is too, in one way or another. And I miss him. What else can I say?
Thank you very much. I'm Jeremy Galen. John and my mother were cousins, and I'm here with my brothers. And I'd like to thank all of you, of course, for sharing your memories of John with us and his family. I miss John as well, and I want to share what he represented to me, because more than anything, I think John's convictions about personal freedom and his approach to living by his own terms on his own ground are principles that we need more desperately today than ever. I think I first understood John. My parents had a photograph they'd given them on I think it was his gift to them on their wedding, and I remember thinking as a kid how cool it was that there was this guy, cousin Johnny, who lived free and did stuff like that. I mean, as a kid, it was like he made art. He gave it as a gift, and there the sort of legend began to grow, and I understood John as someone living in California, a place I'd never been. Seemed like a cool place, and I got a chance to visit him much later, and he so I'd like to basically raise a glass in a way to what I consider his absolutely unimpeachable anti-authoritarianism. The guy couldn't. There was no system that could keep him down or back. He found a way to travel the world for free through frequent flyer miles. And he signed every email. May the miles be with you. May the FF miles be with you. And he was a life hacker. To Silicon Valley, they talk about hacking through something. He just sort of hacked through life's problems, and I think that's an inspiration that I keep with me, and I'm glad we're all here today. Thank you very much.
I'd like to say
The Freedom Plan
something. Oh,
is
yeah,
absolutely correct.
that was beautiful, thank you. I'm talking for Billy today, who's my ex and brought JW and I together and all the connections that I see here. And so here's what Billy wanted to say to all my friends that are here today to celebrate a close friend's life. I'm sorry that I'm unable to attend this gathering as family health concerns dictate that I be here in Oregon. I hope all of you understand and accept my apologies. They were very close friends. I know that John would have wanted us to celebrate his life in the way that we do when we were all gathered with music, love, good food, and a little bit of partying. I have many fond memories of which have been flooding my conscience since I heard of his passing. I felt fortunate to have seen him when he came to visit me up in northern Thailand. He had been staying with his friend in the south and was en route to travel India and then up to Nepal. We spent a week with each other over the Christmas holiday, and I remember telling him that I hope to see him again soon. I'll always have this image of his big smile talking about where we were going to go eat. As he climbed onto the back of the dirt bike I was riding. Always game for some new adventure, always with an open home and a fantastic meal. I'm so glad to have been able to spend the time and look forward to seeing him at some point. Goodbye, bon voyage. I know you're riding a magic carpet rented on miles with cruise control on. In the fast lane, going slower than everybody else. My love to all of you, Billy. And while I'm up here, I'll just say my memories were very fond. JW was very close to me and brought Krishna and I together in India. And just really important people in my life. And whenever Fritz and I would get in a fight, I'd buy a piece of art.
That's why you see all the artwork around here. That's something to do. Not our fight.
We have most of the artwork you see in the house is from John. He had a really good taste in art.
It's good. You should fight more often.
I know.
It's a little too
Big
expensive these
collection
days.
of art.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so all the art brings back so many memories of John. That's what art's for, right? And so, Alan, I really appreciate you coming here. And Jeff Fedrick did some art. He's also an artist, right? It's in the house. So anyway, thanks everybody for being here for John.
What should I say? There's so much to say about him. But we are all here because of John, and he brought us all together. And I don't know where to begin. We have like friends for a long time. The first time I met him, as Alan was saying, his passion for cars. The first time I saw him, maybe like he came to a concert of mine in Berkeley, and it's probably 35 years back or 40. He looked like a super what do you call it? Christ, the superstar, you know, and he had long curly hair and white suit, and he was driving a white Mercedes. And then after the concert, he introduced that he would like to go to India sometime, and you know, just wanted to meet. And it was so cool to meet him. You know, it was seemed so special, and really he all through his life he was being a big inspiration and support for my music, and he believed in me, and that gave me a lot of confidence and inspiration in life. And you know, I learned so much from him, and such a kind, he so knowledgeable about everything. And but you know, mostly he had a good life. He was a very fun-loving person, you know, and I just like he changed my when I came into contact with him and we became friends, he changed my perception about music, about art, so you know, there are people who are so special in your life, and you know, you share so much. But one time it was, I mean, there's so many things to share, but when I heard, I couldn't believe, you know, I had talked to him 2 weeks before he went to Nepal, that he was going to go to Nepal, and for some reason his health wasn't that good, and I spoke to him and he said, we'll meet back in Jaipur in December, you know, when you come back. And, but first time when he went to India, I said, you know, you should learn little Hindi, and he said, just teach me something. And I said, okay, 2 words very important when you're a tourist, you know, you're going all the time in cars and taxis. And so I taught him to say, there was a cold day, like there was a cold day. And there was a banker. There was a banker, means like to close the door. So he remembered those 2 sentences, and as soon as he landed and done it, it was like windy, and he said, there was a banker. And the taxi driver, sir, yes, sir, and immediately, and then he would say, there was a cold day, you know, opened the door, and then he wrote me back and said, hey man, this really worked, you know, and thanks for teaching me. So stories like that, he was like fun-loving person and loved being, and you know, food and art, and you know, just totally, I got exposed to so many. I was kind of closed-minded because I was only seeing one way or listening to certain kind of music, but from reggae to rock and roll to, you know, punk and, you know, jazz and whatnot, you know, and himself, he just admired all the music from the whole world, and it's the music that brought us together. It's the love that he gave to people brought us together. It's the care, the support, and very special. I just can't believe that. I mean, he is with me, but I felt like I lost when somebody like him goes. It's like I lost part of my mind, heart, and body. I'm not the same because when he was there, we talked. We were long time friends. I mean, so many stories. We can go on and on, but every day we have to have time for everybody to tell stories. But just love too, and I wish for peace, harmony in the whole families, people of the world. And his message was very high being and healing person, amazing person. I'm very fortunate that he came into my life, and then he gave me such a beautiful extension of family and friends, and I'm here just because of that. Otherwise, you know, so I'm very thankful and grateful to all of you for sharing, you know, this unique binding through art, music, or, you know, the greatest thing is the love. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gene.
at some point, just as I was setting up here, I thought of a melody that I would like to play for you, just 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I mean, afterwards, whenever it's time. But it's just, especially for him, I just considered of this like a painting. This melodies and some of this amazing that I would like to share with you later on. Thank you.
Could I say one more thing? I would be remiss.
So Alan, could you expand on you lived with John for a while, right? Can you expand on, some of us don't know your exact relationship.
Oh,
Can you,
15 years, he was my roommate.
Oh,
and,
really?
no,
I
no,
didn't
Keys,
know that.
mostly, right?
Cameron Keys, yeah,
wow.
sailboats and, you know,
And you
What's that
used to have
story,
this boat and
the Toad,
That's right.
Wild Ride.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say was, my wife had passed away and left me with 6 young children. And I didn't quite know how I was gonna put it together. John came along. He said, move in, Belgian Keys. And he was so generous to my kids. I mean, I have to say, how many single men would take in 7 people? And especially an artist, I mean. But he was so good to my kids, he'd fill the fridge with all kinds of ice creams, endless stuff. And when their TV broke, he bought a new one, because I couldn't afford that. And if I didn't have the rent, he'd say, I'll take that painting for your half of the rent. I mean, I was amazed at what a wonderful person he was. You know, and my kids loved him. They used to get plastic ants and throw them under his sheets. And they'd tease him all the time. And he loved it. He really loved it. And I have to say, I've never met a more generous, for a guy who loved freedom and just doing whatever you please, he really was good to my kids. And I have to, I mean, I don't think many people would have done that.
You know what,
I
Mike,
didn't
you
want
can
to
leave
leave
it
it
open.
just a joke.
Hi everyone. As my brother said, the cousin Johnny was my mom's first cousin. He was a legend. I always and always will idolize my cousin Johnny. Growing up in a conventional suburban environment, I used to look forward to seeing cousin Johnny whenever I could. Talking with Johnny at Thanksgiving and other holidays gave me direct access to the far out world of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Here, here.
Johnny was sophisticated, spiritual, kind, and easy to talk to. I once spent an entire Thanksgiving dinner naming different items so he could tell me whether they were more yin or more yang. For me, cousin Johnny kept the dream of the 1960s alive in an authentic and unwavering commitment to freedom, self-expression, and pleasure. When I was a freshman in college, he sent me a FedEx package that contained a vacuum-sealed brownie the size of a typewriter. Let's just say that the entire dormitory knew how good a baker he was. As I entered adulthood, cousin Johnny became a true friend and always made the extra effort to keep in touch and to visit. His emails were colorful, thoughtful, personal correspondence that were always very fun to decode. Cousin Johnny was equally as comfortable wearing an ascot in a fancy Midtown Manhattan hotel bar as he was lounging around his apartment in a threadbare sweater. Cousin Johnny was a free spirit who is now the freest he's ever been. I'm sad that I won't get to see his warm, smiling face again, but I'm grateful that I was able to know him. May the frequent flyer miles be with you always.
He had almost 1 million frequent flyer miles.
Who else would like to tell a story?
This is spontaneous, which I'm not usually good at. I'm a writer, so I like things spelled out. But I've known John for maybe 30 years. somewhere around there. But I first met him at Paul Spiegel's house in San Francisco by Julius Kahn Park, and immediately, it struck me as just kind of a larger than life character. I mean, he was like, not quite out of a movie, but kind of like that. It was just something about him and what he was doing. I remember he was making these drinks called Cobra Kisses, which I'd never heard of. Cognac and champagne mixture, and it was just so delicious. But anyway, he made quite an impression on me, and then I found out he lived in Marin, which I lived in now, and so I became good friends with him for various and sordid reasons. But I had been to most of his houses, including the Bell Marin Keys house, numerous times, and when he lived in Tiburon. I think he lived in a couple of places in Tiburon, and I did some computer work for him there. But one of my favorite stories about John is that when this was a number of years ago, maybe 20 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer, but he was a member of the Harbor Point Racket Swim Club at Strawberry, and I wasn't a member of much of anything at that point. But he said, well, come to the club with me, and they have a gym, and they have a pool, they have tennis, they have all this stuff, and I go, great, and I was a pretty active person, a mountain biker, and so I thought this sounds great. So I go over and meet him, and he said, I'll be over by the pool. So I go to the pool. I think Fritz and I talked about this too. I go to the pool, and he was never a slim, trim person. I think at this point he was maybe a little larger, but he's lounged out on one of those lounge recliners, and all he has on is a tiny thong, a thong that's like, I don't know, leopard or something. It's just outrageous. And I walk and I go, oh my God! I'm like, I'm looking around. There's not too many people around, but I'm thinking, how would you go in public in this thing? I'd be in my balcony maybe. I'd never seen a man in a thong like that. But he was sporting it like he was Tarzan or something. It somehow made him more masculine or muscular side. But anyway, I'm sure I said something funny about it. But I went with it, and I probably had my my older trunks packed into my knees or something by then. But anyway, so I said, well, this is great. What a nice club. I'd never been there. And I said, let's go for a swim. He goes, no, I'm pretty happy here. And I'm looking around. I said, okay, I'm going to go swim. He goes, okay. So, I go for a swim. And then I say, well, what else are we going to do? We're going to go, let's go work out or something. He goes, no, I'm pretty happy. Just lounging by the pool. And so I said, well, I'm going to go, lift some weights or do something. I want to check out the facility. He goes, okay. So I go do that for a little bit, and I go, I feel bad. He's invited me over. I'm not going to spend time with him. So I go back and say, well, what are we going to do? Can we go, maybe we'll play a game of tennis or something? He goes, no, I don't really play tennis. I'm like, what do you do? He goes, pretty much this. I'm working on my tan. And of course, he wasn't really tanned at all. I don't know. But anyway, it was just, I think of that story often, and I have a lot of stories about John. Most of them I don't want to tell in a public setting, but most people who knew him well knew what he was like and all that. But I get a chuckle every time and that's how I picture John now, laying out, in his song. Anyway, thank you.
I remember that song.
Does anyone else have a story? You see, stories draw out from us memories and patterns, and they're very important to celebrate with a story.
This is my daughter, Rose.
Ah, Rose.
Hello. So my dad is Alan. We heard how we moved in with John, I think when he was 32. I was 6, so John was like a father to me. I remember John being someone who really introduced us to lots of new things. Sorry, I do miss John. He was like another dad. Anyway, John was always very generous with food. The youngest of 6 kids of an artist. I always had to fight for seconds and thirds. But John was always very generous. He used to fill our freezer with these nectar nuggets from Whole Foods, wherever it was that he
He'd go
found
to the health food and get the most unhealthy.
They were so unhealthy. They were from a health food store. So we used to eat them
Good for you.
constantly, and we still talk about them. We still look for them. Oops. I don't think they make them anymore. Thank you. I think I'm loud enough that I don't need it, but
You probably are.
he used to also send us these Neiman Marcus candy-covered apples for Christmas every year. They were just top of the line, and they were like 3 inches thick with chocolate, and we used to keep them in the garage and eat them all the time. And then when I grew up and John moved out, we would still see him all the time. And then I went to New York for college, and John would visit and take us out to restaurants. And just showed us the best. Like, he would invite me to concerts that Krishna was performing at, and he was just always very generous with his time and his, just attention, and just made sure that we were always together, and happy. And I just miss him a lot.
Thank you. Who else would care to share a story?
Christy.
I'm Christy, and I first learned about John from my late husband, Shafi, who was very close to Krishna. And sorry, I'm getting a little emotional because it brings back. Anyway, he told me Krishna was my husband's, perhaps closest friend and beloved musician. So anyone who was a friend of Krishna's, and he said, I just met this young friend of Krishna's who was, he described as being kind of brash, and he drove his car very fast. And I said, oh, well, and he was kind of a sports car. He didn't exactly sound the type who would take up Indian music, especially classical music. But later I would learn that he was a dedicated devotee. And over time, I think, sort of became a fixture in our house because he and my husband could converse back and forth. I think he was probably the only local person, aside from Krishna, that he could sort of, my husband could gab with, on India sort of esoterica. And John was like an endless source of lore. And especially when it came to musicians, there were certain, maybe I would say, women vocalists especially, and they would sort of argue about them and talk about them back and forth. But I think what struck me about John is that he could always, and we always called him JW, is that he could expound really on any topic. And I always found him fascinating, and it just, he would just go on and on. And I remember at one point, I don't know if this is true, but he said that he actually majored in astrology at UC Berkeley. And I go, he sort of made his own, is that true? Maybe people can verify it, but he said he gave me the impression that he crafted his own, sort of scholarly study there. And so he was, he had infinite knowledge about astrology. And of course, I was sort of fascinated but very skeptical. But he would elaborate on that from time to time, and he would give me strange books to read by, forgetting his first name, Stitchin. And I thought, what an absurd author. How could he possibly read something like this? And I've since learned that, oh, well, maybe there's some merit in this story, but it took a few decades and for me to sort of digest it. And I think partly because John was probably one of the few persons who could understand my husband's crackpot theories about Mount Mavor, and he would entertain that. So all I know is that he was just an extremely expansive, generous person, and I really felt like in some ways he reincarnated, you know, as if he were in the old days, he was some kind of nawab or princely figure in India, and he loved to hold court and listen. And he was there. He was just always there, and very discerning listener. But, you know, of course, very expensive taste, and very indulgent. But that just made him, it sort of endeared him more to us. Anyway, I will miss him.
Thank you, Kristen.
Who else would like to tell a story?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I cannot see, but I knew John through many years that he was with India. And I saw these remarkable photographs of a young boy. Perhaps he's lost his tooth in that second picture, top row. Who knows about whether or not this man that we're remembering was a child like this? Was he expansive and unusual as a little person? Does anybody can anybody speak to that? But what are the family tales of your cousin Johnny? Thank you.
I think that there's no one here who's really qualified to answer your question fully, but I think that he really chafed against the constraints of what where he came from, which was a suburban Boston, very sort of conservative, typical 1950s household. So I don't think that he really became who he was, who you knew he was, until he came to Berkeley in I guess the late 60s or early 70s and found that you know the people who accepted him for who he was and let him be free. So there are no stories that I can recall of him tearing you know through the neighborhood in the way that
He used to tell me stories about Governor Dummer, the private school.
Why don't you sit?
And he went to a private school, and it's a Harvard prep school. Well, you're expected to go to Harvard out of there. And that was the last one in his mind. He wanted to go 3,000 miles away from that family and set up his own little empire in Berkeley, where they couldn't get to him.
So he discovered this voice, his inner voice, at a young age. It sounds like he was somewhat, I don't want to say defiant, but
Defiant.
Defiant. So the other thing I want to say is that while I'm staring into the light, I see these little cosmic dust things floating in the air. And as a child, my father said we were cosmic dust. And so I think John is here. This is kind of cool that the light is, look at all this incredible dust happening. Not that your house is dusty. It's cosmic dust.
I love that.
I'm very curious because we have 2 little grandchildren, and I am certain that we are witnessing who they're going to be. We have an 18-month-old and a 4-year-old. I would like to know about that part of John's life, but it sounds like he had his head set in the right.
Well, he was expected to go to Harvard, and because his father had attended Harvard, his mother attended Wellesley College, and so that was the expectation. But they filed the application to Harvard, but he pulled the picture out. And they won't accept you unless you send them a picture, because they don't want any ugly students. And that's a fact. They were taken to court once, Harvard was, for doing that as discrimination, and the court ruled that no, it's not race, sex, creed, or anything. It's because we don't want any ugly students. It was okay. So he knew that, and so that's why he pulled his picture.
Wow. That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
Any other stories? Well, since there are no other stories anyone wants to tell any, I want to come back to something that Paul said and that you alluded to about John, that we're magical beings. And we have forgotten our magic. If a space alien stood in front of us and looked at us, he'd say, wow, you're a walking bag of water. Every element in the earth is in our body, in organic form. What kind of magic is that? It's mystical magic. It's who we are. We draw in our breath, whether we know it or not, the energy of the sun to sustain us. We're children of the sun, as the Persians say, the Zoroastrians. They don't venerate the sun. They understand the sun nurtures us. It grows our crops. We take it in our foods. In order to sustain ourselves and our bodies, we have to be grounded and connected to the earth. So there's a flow of energy that runs from the sun to the core of the earth and through us. Whether we want to know that or not matters not. It's just a fact. So in order to assist John, and I feel that as well, that your stories have drawn bits and pieces of John here in this present moment in order to be able to ascend to whatever levels John is able to ascend to. Now, he was on his way. He would have loved, I suppose, to get into Tibet, but he settled for Nepal. I suspect that he was going for Shambhala. In that journey, that's where he chose to leave the earth, whether we think it was an accident or not. It's where he chose to leave. And we here can draw in those pieces of John with our heart and our mind, bring them together, coalesce them with the simplicity of our breath. The breath, whether we know it or not, is a dual breath. It draws up the energy of the earth and the solar energy down. So you draw in the golden energy from the sun down. You draw the silver energy from the earth up into you. It spins around the body. In the Hebrew understanding, it would activate what's called a Merkabah. It's a vehicle of travel, well known in Tibet. You see it all over the buildings. So, what I would like for those that wish to do this is just focus on your breath. And allow the breath, in the simplicity of the breath, to take a dual breath. Silver up, gold down, just as you normally breathe. Just focus on that. And establish a pillar of gold and silver light. That as it joins with the pillars of everyone else in the room, establishes a huge pillar of gold and silver light. Now the Tibetans have what are called tankas, and there are gateways in the tankas. And those gateways are accessed if you know the tonnage of the gateways. And that will be John's path out if he chooses to take it. So as you breathe now, the simplicity of the gold and silver breaths, let that attune in your body, let yourself attune to the earth, whose body you have by the grace of the earth, and to the solar spectrum that feeds and nourishes us in all ways. Let that energy now begin nourishing your own cells, your own organs of the body. Let it expand out through the auric field, filled with gold and silver light, just in the natural breath of yourself. Allow it to spin your Merkaba field, the energy fields around your body, just like around the planet, southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere. Let it accelerate to its optimum spin. Allow that vitality to be seen and felt within you. Allow the mind to go silent. Just allow the breath to do its work. And as you do that, sense and feel your pillar blending and melding with everyone else in this room, establishing a massive pillar of gold and silver light. And let them ride on those miles. So, as we do that and we attune to it, I'm going to ask Rudy, a friend of mine, an old priest, to sound the tones of those portal gateways.
Kantarea Unshadai John. Ha'ala E'ale Jeshwahi Lachem. Da'ar Nase Unveitum Adala Se Ne. Utrebete Ta'Asia Intadoe. Ta'Asia Intadoe. Ta'Asia Intadoe. Yakala Hadek Ekba. Nu'a Du Ithra Shah Sa. E Leha E. Ha'etre Ina E Ekasha. Ha'etre Ina E Ekasha. Ha'etre Ina E Ekasha.
Allow yourself to continue to breathe that.
That's Hebrew.
Sense and feel all the parts of John coalescing together in whatever appreciation he has of all of you and you of him. Let it be met evenly. He met life that way, evenly. Allow yourself to meet him evenly and fuel him on his journey. Shalom.
The first part of this piece is like thinking of John, and I will, it's more like a reflections. And the second piece that I just was thinking of him this afternoon when I was setting up, and came up with a melodic composition that is dedicated to him and his memory. The first time I'm playing, and I hope I will another time I will play it somewhere. But this composition is in a special afternoon raga called Shivrajni. And John always used to talk about Bam Bam, Shiva, and the first time he invited me to a party, he said, "You wanna go to a party? They do chillums and things there." I said, "What is chillums?" And like sadhus and everything. And he said, "Yes." So I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." And it was so much fun and music and nice people in Berkeley when he used to live in Berkeley. This is probably the purest form because normally we use other drone and this and that, but it's like
How about that? Wow.
I'm very thankful to Michael Lewis. I would like to meet you, Michael Lewis, who is longtime friend, many years ago. We also go back long time now, college days, school days, or girlfriend, boyfriend days. So it was very nice. Michael G has been playing tablas for a long time and has studied with Zakir Bhai, and we played together. And it's really nice. He's by profession he's a doctor, but he's more healing musician than he takes care of all of us in this area and all of the good musicians. I'd like to invite, we have been fooling around with some appropriate songs and Mike Dingo, and we have been practicing some Beatles song. This is the probably first time you hear the Beatles song on sitar, although you enjoy it. But we'll play one song for you. Is that okay? Paul Spiegel also we go back, but he heard the first time he heard a fusion album that I did, and he was the first one, and I was very surprised that he knew about it. The Rasa CD of, with Judy Stacker and the bluegrass and all the folk musicians together. Okay, man?
You start this one. Hold on.
Okay, are you ready? This is there is something about Beagles, I have to tell you, like, we're all kind of connected. John loved music, John loved all kinds of music, and he opened me up to like sort of experiment and listen to other things, and then I, because of my guru, Ravi Shankar, Pandit Ravi Shankar, I came in contact with George Harrison and Beatles.
beloved that's sleeping, while my guitar gently weeps. I look at the floor and I see it needs sweeping, but still my guitar gently weeps. I don't know why nobody told you how to unfold your love. I don't know why someone controlled you. They bought and sold. I look at the world and I notice it's turning, while my guitar gently bleeds. With every mistake we must surely be learning, still my guitar gently bleeds. I don't know how you were diverted, you were perverted too. I don't know how you were inverted, no one alerted you. I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping, still my guitar gently weeps. Look at you all, while my guitar gently weeps. Can we do that Lucky song?
I don't know.
Yeah, you So I met John, I'm going to say my piece now. I met John through Inja, and who I also met Krishna through Inja, and we went to Jaipur in January for my birthday, and I had dinner with John, and he kept mentioning an old Emerson, Lake and Palmer song that he thought we should do sometime, and so I worked on it a little bit over there, but knowing that we were going to be gathering today, it's one you can all sing along to, and Krishna may join me, but I don't know if he will. But I'm way out of tune, aren't I?
It's fine.
I'm so sorry. people. Maybe we should do this after dinner. You've all been sitting here too long. Why don't you go eat and we can jam out later, okay? Is that right with you?
Sing the second one.
What?
I gave everybody the.
Okay. Well, I still need.
Yeah, imagine.
Everybody got the song sheet already, so.
I'll do this one first. He had white horses and ladies by the score, all dressed in satin and waiting by the door. Oh, what a lucky man he was. Oh, what a lucky man he was. White lace and feathers, they made up his bed of gold covered mattress on which he was laid. Oh, what a lucky man he was. Oh, what a lucky man he was. He went to fight wars for his country and his king, of his honor and his glory. The people would sing. Oh, what a lucky man he was. Oh, what a lucky man he was.
That's nice.
A bullet had found him. His blood ran as he cried. No money could save him. So he lay down and he died. Oh, what a lucky man he was. Oh, what a lucky man he was. One more chorus, how about that? You're all getting it now. Oh, what a lucky man he was. Oh, what a lucky man he was. So we've been requested, we have one more sing-along for you all. You got the lyrics here. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. beside. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to give or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people share living life in need. You might say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brother and sister in one man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You might say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Thank you, John. All right. Thank you, John, for bringing us together.
Will you take our
Oh. Thank you.